Want to make your players feel like they're traveling in a dark and rainy forest, or maybe in the middle of a bone-chilling blizzard, or maybe they're swimming in the depths of the mysterious ocean? Well, all of that is easily possible in Foundry VTT with a module called FXMaster. Let me teach you how it works and how you can get immersive maps. Hi there, my name is Fondu, your VTT wizard, and I have over 300 hours in Foundry VTT. On this channel called Dice and Easy, I give you VTT tutorials and daily TTRPG memes as YouTube shorts. If you're interested in any of that stuff, hit the subscribe button down there. Before we go into Foundry, a couple of disclaimers. First, I'm using the latest stable build of Foundry VTT version 11, and I know that this module also works with version 10, but below that, I cannot guarantee that it will work. Second, remember to turn the module on in the Manage Modules menu for your Foundry world. Otherwise, the module won't work because it's turned off. With those two simple disclaimers out of the way, let's jump into Foundry right now. Okay, we are now inside Foundry VTT, version 11 mind you, but this should also work in version 10. And as I mentioned before, please remember to turn on your module, going to the Settings tab and then the Manage Modules menu and turning it on there. All right, once we have our module FXMaster turned on, you're going to notice this new button here. When you hover, it says Effects Control, looks like a little wand, and clicking on it opens this set of new tools. Let me show you each tool and how it works and what you can do with it. So at the top we have special effects. You click that open, it pops out a new little menu for you. I like to put it to the side myself. And in here you have some pre-made effects. There's not very many of them, granted, but you can add more effects here either yourself or by subscribing to some people's Patreon like GB2A animations and such. But what this essentially allows you to do is to play one-shot effects. For example, if someone were to cast a fireball in this room, I could click on fireball, then go here and click, and boom. Now you can see this fire effect appear here. It's going to play and then disappear. Now, there's a few options on how you can play these special effects. So I show you just clicking, but this option is selected by default. It's called Face Target. So what you can do if you have for example, this acid line spell and you want it to be facing a specific direction, let's say diagonal upright. So I can drag upright and then release, and boom, you can see the effect goes in the direction of my mouse pull, starting from where the mouse pull started. But of course, you might notice that if I would want it to go all the way over here, it's not going to. The effect has a certain length to it, so it's going to stay there. Now, there are ways, or options rather, here to get around that. So the next one is throw to target. Let's choose the fireball, for example. Now, let's say our target would be around here. So I could click, drag, and then go over here, and now you see the fireball starts from where I am and then moves forward. Now, granted, probably don't want fireball to work exactly like that, but you could use this, for example, for thrown weapons and such. Then we have the extend to target option here. So this means that the effect will be stretched to reach the target. So for example, if we are here now and we want to shoot all the way over here, but we know the effect doesn't actually make it that way, this will stretch the effect to reach the target. Now, granted, it doesn't look as good, of course, because the target is getting stretched and transformed, but you can do it that way. So the next option here is expand to target. This is similar to extend to target, but what this does is uniformly transforms the effect. So instead of just stretching the effect, it actually makes the effect bigger so that it can reach that target. And in this case, the effect itself remains in good quality because it's not getting stretched at all, but it might not meet the measurements that you quite want. So it's up to you to decide which one works better for you. And then lastly, we have rotate. So this simply rotates an effect. So if you had, let's say, a fire trap or something like that, you could make it spin like thus. Simple effects. Then going to the next option, this is where we're starting to get into the interesting territory, are particle effects. So if you're not familiar, particle effects are essentially a bunch of small images that get generated from a single point, and then from that point, usually movement, rotation, etc. are added to bring life to these particles. For example, you could use this for embers or clouds or fog, and that's actually what we have here. So we have a whole host of things that we can try. The first category are animals. We have bats, birds, crows, eagles, rats, and spiders. So I'm going to show you the crows here just as an example for how the birds work. So now we have the crows selected. If you click this little arrow, it'll open up the controls. You can adjust stuff here like the scale, so how big are the crows, speed, how fast do they move, lifetime. This means how long does a single particle, so one bird in this case, how long does it live before it disappears? Sometimes you might want them to live a very short life. Sometimes you might want them to linger for a long time. It's up to you. Density, how many particles are there going to be? How many birds are there going to be? Sometimes you might not want that many. Sometimes you might want a lot. And then opacity, how opaque are they? Can you see through them at all, or are they fully solid? And then you can change also their color if you want to add a tint to them. So let's save changes so you can see what this does. So now you can see over here, there's a little bird, and there as well, moving around. Quite nice, quite nice. But these are fairly small, so if we zoom out, you can see the movement there, but they're a little small, so we could make them bigger like so. And now you're going to notice once the new birds by this particle system are going to be born, you can see that they're a little bit bigger. So it depends on what kind of stuff you want. You can adjust these to your liking. So these are the birds. They mostly work the same way. You have regular birds over here, you have eagles, you have bats, but they all work in a similar fashion. Except the birds and the eagles, they have the flap and glide settings, and then the birds also has mixed settings, so you can choose what type of bird or eagle there is. Crows and bats do not have that. Then we have rats and spiders, so these will skitter on the floor rather than be flying, but of course they're still going to move all over the map, so I can show you how the rats work over here. So now I saved the changes, so the birds are going to disappear. And now you can see these little rats. If I zoom in, these little rats moving around here. They're of course very, very small right now, but that might do the trick for you. It depends what you want. So that's for the animals. Then we have the other section. Here's only a few simple options here. We have bubbles. That is exactly what it sounds like. It makes a bunch of bubbles. So this can be very good for some kind of ethereal, fairy-like setting. Maybe you're in a bathhouse or something. This can work quite nicely. Of course, the default setting is very dense when it comes to the amount of bubbles there are, so you can play around with these settings over here to get the desired look. So if you want less bubbles, you would lower the density, and if you want them to move slower, you could lower the speed to get a more ethereal look and add more lifetime so that each bubble stays around for longer. Then we have embers, which are exactly what they sound like. They are embers, in fact. Actually, I forgot to turn off the rats. Let's turn them off. The ember effect is very subtle by default. So if we zoom in here, you can see these little red dots that are moving around here, and these are the embers. So by default, embers are very subtle. So what we could do is bump up the scale, and now we can see the embers a lot clearer. Of course, this is a very heavy effect now. You probably don't want it to be this obvious, but just to showcase you what they look like. And then lastly, we have stars. Stars is the same thing. They're very subtle. Oh, let's turn that off. They're very subtle by default, not giving you a lot to work with. They're similar to the embers, but they're these kinds of blue dots that are moving quite slowly. And again, you could increase the scale to make them more visible, like so, and then they become more pronounced, like so. But of course now, once again, a little bit too much. But it's just to give you an idea of what these can do. Then we have weather. So this is the section that I use the most and that I really enjoy, because this can be used to create a very immersive feeling. So let's go with clouds first. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's going to generate a bunch of clouds going from top to bottom by default that are going to scroll over this area. And it creates this very nice sense of depth to your scene. It makes it feel very alive and more immersive in my opinion. As you can see now, we have these lovely clouds. It makes it feel more summery, more spring-like, though it just brings more life to this whole scene. And once again, if you want to adjust the settings, they are over here. You got the scale, so how big are the clouds? What is their direction? So what place do they start from? Right now they start from 90, which I believe is up. That would be 90 degrees. So if you wanted to come from the side, I assume it would be 180, then 270, and then 0 is the other side. You can play around with those, go in 90-degree increments to get those 90-degree angles. I'm not sure if it goes in clockwise or counterclockwise, but you can play around with it and try what you like. Then we have speed, how fast are they moving? Lifetime, once again, how long does one cloud stick around? And then density, how many clouds are there? And then if you want to maybe make them less solid so that you can see through them more, so that they don't obstruct your map too much, you could adjust that. And adding a tint is also possible if you would like to do that. These same settings are going to be for all of these over here, but the clouds one is a really good one. I really enjoyed it myself. It creates a great atmosphere, and I'm going to show you a bit later in this video how we can create a really cool scene and make it really feel special, but I'll go into that in a little bit. Then we have fog. My suggestion with fog is to be very careful with it, because as this fog is going to come in here and the clouds are going to disappear after we've gotten rid of them, you're going to notice that the fog by default is very heavy. So right now, the fog is such that it's getting hard to see the map, especially the tokens here. Because if we go here, this is the token. All these effects are drawn over everything else. You can't change that for the particle effects. The particle effects are going to be drawn on top of everything else. So with the fog, if you're going to use it, I highly recommend decreasing the opacity and the density to make it so that it's not so disruptive, because the effects should not get in the way of your gameplay. So your players should be still able to see what the heck is going on your battle map. That's important. Unless, of course, you're creating a scenario where the players are not supposed to see anything because they're in the fog. Maybe, for example, you're doing the beginning of Curse of Strahd and they get swept up by the fog, and then later on the fog goes away to reveal they're in Barovia. You could do something like that. But if you're doing battle, you want to make sure your players can actually see their tokens and the others' tokens, so be sparing with the fog. Autumn Leaves is another wonderfully simple one. If you want to create an autumnal feeling, you can get this, and it has these little leaves flying around, so this can create a really nice autumnal feeling for your game. Now this is another one I use a lot. This is rain. There's 3 different types of rain. There's regular rain, so this rain is going to go from side to side on your screen, as you can see. Right now, it's going kind of side to side. It's not in perspective with a top-down map. You might not mind this. You might mind this. That's kind of up to you. And again, you can go in here and change the scale, direction, speed to get a different type of feeling. You can also do a rain without splash, because if we look here in this part, you notice that there's little splashes here happening. Now, you might not mind that, but that might feel a little weird because the splashes are happening, but everything is out of perspective compared to this map. So you can do this same rain, but with no splashing. So now if we just wait for the effect to change, now you can see here the effect, it's just raining. There's no splashing. And then lastly, we have the one that I like most for top-down maps. It's top-down rain, unsurprisingly. And here we can now see we have rain that is coming from top-down and incorrect perspective with a map like this. This is the one that I like to use the most for this type of map. And then lastly, we have the wintry type of deal. So we have snow, just your regular snowfall, peaceful, wonderful. And then we have a snowstorm, which is more aggressive snowfall. And again, there are settings here you can play around with to make it even more aggressive if you would so like to. Let's turn this off and go to the next tool. Next, we have filter effects. So these are very similar to the particle effects, but these are basically filters that are drawn on top of the entire scene. So the main difference here is that this will cover the entire scene, and once we talk about masks in a little bit, these cannot be masked. So they will always be drawn on top of everything. You have quite simple settings here. You have bloom, so it'll make the scene more vibrant and colorful. You have to be, of course, careful not to completely blow it out. But as you can see, it makes it a little bit more, feel a little more summery, a little bit more daytimey. Then we have just regular color settings here. You can change the tint, saturation, contrast, brightness, gamma stuff. Then we have a fog that you can do through here as well. But once again, I would not recommend doing the fog through the filter effect because it's going to draw it on top of everything and you cannot mask it away. So I typically don't like using this through here because of that. But you couldn't do it here if you don't mind the fog being drawn on top of everything. Then we have lightning. So this is just some flashing. You're not going to actually have bolts of lightning striking. You're just going to have this type of flashing to simulate a lightning bolt flash. With this one, my advice is to be very careful with the brightness because this can get very cumbersome very fast. Actually, now it's already feeling a little bit too much to me. I'm going to lower it because this type of regular flashing will irritate your players. And if you have someone who happens to have epilepsy, this could trigger an epileptic attack. So be very, very careful with the brightness here and the duration of the flash. So I think the duration, for example, is way too long. But if we make it shorter, it's not as bad. But you want to be very, very careful with lightning. Then we have an old-timey film effect. So, welcome to the old-timey saloon. How's it going? So maybe you could use this for something called Cthulhu game. You have this old-timey filter going on. And the next one, Predator, is perfect for your cyberpunk games. It creates this kind of CRT tech look. And you have some settings here that you can play around with to see what type of look you get, but this is great for like sci-fi, cyberpunk kind of stuff. And then lastly, underwater creates this wavy effect, make it feel like you're all underwater. With this one, again, I would also go look at the settings, like the speed and scale, because I feel like the scale is maybe a little bit too much on this one, so I would probably lower it to make it a little bit less jarring. Because with all of these effects, you want them to enhance your playing experience, not get in the way of it. All right, let me get rid of this and talk about the last part here, which is the mask. So as you might have noticed, when I was doing these particle effects, for example, this cloud effect, let's turn it back on, you'll notice that the clouds are actually drawn over this building, though we might not want that because, well, we're indoors, so we don't want to see clouds indoors. It kind of breaks the immersion. We only want the clouds to be visible here. And that is very much doable. What you can do is you can go to the drawing tool and pick any of the drawing options you have here, rectangle, circle, polygon, or freehand. And if you draw one, I'm just going to draw this quickly to illustrate a point. Let's make it fairly big. You draw it. Then let's zoom in over here, right click. First, I would recommend you lock it and then hide it because your players don't want to see this random rectangle drawn here. So hide it from them, you can still see it. And then here at the top left, there's a new button that says Mask FXMaster Particle Effects. So we click that, and now you notice that this area does not let these effects inside them. So here you notice the clouds are gotten rid of. So now when we zoom out, we have this nice effect like the clouds are only happening there outdoors. Of course, this is not perfect because the shape doesn't quite work here, but you get the idea. What you could do is take the polygon tool, for example, and then draw the walls out. Actually, let me do that right now to show you how that works. All right, we've now drawn this shape around the walls of our house. So now what we're gonna do, first we're gonna lock it, then we're gonna hide it, and then we're gonna go over here and toggle the map. So now, when we look at this building, we can see that the clouds are outside there, but they're not going in the building. So now we create this wonderful feeling like outside, there's this vibrancy, this life, but it doesn't affect the indoors and doesn't get in the way. You see what I mean? And then lastly, regarding this mask, you can actually invert it. So let's say you would want this effect to only happen inside here, but not outside here for some reason. There's this purple button here that says Invert Particle Effect Mask. So we click that, and then it inverts it, which means that now the effect only happens inside this area. So if for some reason you want the effect to be localized to something very specific, then you could create a shape around it and invert the mask. And let's just turn it back, boom. And then lastly here we have a button to clear the particle effects and also to save them as a macro. Let's clear them. Boop. It's going to ask me, are you okay? So there you see what you can do with this tool, but let me actually give you two cool concrete examples of what we can create with this tool. So we have this swamp map here, and I want to create a kind of dark night where it's raining heavily, and also there's some thunder, or lightning rather. So with FXMaster, easily I can do that. First, let's transition to night, or darkness rather, to make this scene look more dark. So we have these two light sources here, this little camp. So now we have this dark vibe going on here. Very cool, very nice. Then we're gonna go to our effects control panel. We're gonna open our particle effects. Let's move it over here. First, let's start with the rain. So I'm gonna go with the top-down rain because I like when the rain is in perspective. We're going to leave the scale as is. We're going to increase the speed to make it seem like it's a storm, and maybe the density a little bit as well. And then let's turn it on. Okay, it's looking quite nice. Maybe increase the speed or the density still just a little bit. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I'd say that makes it look like a storm. And now let's add the finishing touch to this. So we've saved those changes. Let's go to the filter effects and add a lightning to it. Now, like I said, we want to be very careful with the brightness. So I'm going to bring the brightness down to about 0.7. We're going to decrease the duration as well. And we're going to increase the period also so that the lightning doesn't happen so frequently, so that it doesn't become really annoying. That's not quite what I want. Let's try increasing the duration. I think the duration might be what's breaking it right now. Nope, it's not that. It might be the brightness. Let's crank the brightness and see how that affects things. Okay, there we go. Brightness was too low, so it was kind of dark. So now we have a rainy scene. Let's plonk our little test boy over there. And this is what it looks like for our character now. They are in this heavy rain. There's lightning flashing, and you could imagine some ambient sound in the background of, you know, a stormy night. So this looks quite nice. We could easily get this with FXMaster by tweaking some values, and now we're here. So we've created a pretty cool atmosphere. Let me show you one more other scene for a different kind of vibe. So now we have this building on a beautiful summer day. What I've already done, as you might see here, let me zoom in so you can see it. I've drawn out a shape around the outer walls of this building to use as a mask. You're going to see why in a second. And I want to create a overcast, sunny day kind of vibe. So first, to get that overcast look, we're going to go to particle effects, open the window, go to weather, clouds. I like the default settings quite well, so we're just going to turn that on. And the clouds are going to start pushing in there. It looks like I did not activate the mask on my shape. Let me just check. Yes, the mask is turned off, so let's turn that on. Or no, it was turned on. Sorry. I missaw that. So yes, the clouds are not going inside the building. Wonderful. That's exactly as we wanted. So now we have this cloudy day vibe, yes, but it's still missing something to get that overcast kind of vibe. So what we can do is go to Effect Control, then Filter Effect, and use a little bit of bloom. Now we're going to want to turn the blur off. We don't want any blurring to happen per se, and we want to turn up the threshold as well so that the bloom doesn't bleed as much as normally. And then we save the changes, and it's going to create this bright vibrancy to the map that gives it that kind of overcast, sunny look. So now if we zoom in here especially, you can kind of see this overcast kind of look. Sure, the bloom does affect the clouds a little bit as well, but I think overall this creates a very nice vibe, and it does give this kind of overcast feeling, like a sunny summer day. Oh, and one last thing to note about this, these effects, especially on big maps, have a performance hit. So if you have big maps and you're using these effects, if your players have less than stellar machines, their performance might be heavily affected by these effects. And because of that, also be sparing when you're using these effects. But if you have one or two players who are really struggling with these effects, but others are fine, what your players can do is go to the settings, configure settings, then go to FXMaster, and there's enable effects. So they can turn this off. Now this effect is per client, aka per user. So if they turn this off for themselves, it's not going to turn off for everyone else. And the same for you. If you turn it off for yourself, it's not going to turn it off for your players. So this way, those players that are having performance issues can turn these effects off and not suffer that performance hit. Now you'll be making stylish and incredibly immersive scenes in no time. Impress your players and let me know what they thought. If you found this video helpful, please like the video and subscribe to my channel down there. Doing that helps this video reach more people, and I would really appreciate it, so please do it. I also stream on twitch.tv/diceandeasy every Monday and Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern European Time, which is 8 a.m. Pacific and 11 a.m. Eastern. Join one of my streams and come talk Foundry VTT with me live. Link to my Twitch channel is in the description box below. Now on the screen, you're going to see another video of mine where I show you the new features of Foundry VTT version 11, including better windows and compendium folders. Thanks a lot for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.